Welcome back. You're watching ENCA's constant coverage of the 55th National Conference of the ANC. Of course, we're bringing you quite a bit of analysis as we wait for those proceedings to get underway. And I've actually got political analyst Ebrahim Harvey, who's been with us this morning, just having a look at all of the developments that are currently going on at Nasrec and also at the registration site in Omonde. Pule Mabe did clarify for us now that proceedings are set to officially get underway at 2 o'clock. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty doubtful that this is going to happen.
Well, let's hope fervently that it does happen, because if it doesn't happen, then the pressure upon them to rush through important items on that agenda is going to be very evident, man. It's very unfortunate, honestly, that the most important conference ever, probably, in the history of the ANC, this happens. And at this juncture, when they're so crisis-ridden, the country's in a mess, everything that this has happened, on the opening day of the National Conference. But I really do believe what I said earlier. It's symptomatic of the organizational malaise. Yeah. So many problems. The ANC's, and Nomvula Mokonyane was correct when she said, it is true, I think so, the weakest NEC, she said, ever. I think that's part of the problem. The NEC of Ramaphosa won't agree, but that is what Nomvula Mokonyane has said. The ANC is facing its biggest political organizational crisis in post-apartheid South Africa right now. And so what happened today, I mean, they were unable to pay their staff, the problems in there. Look what's happened today, Yeah. I mean, 3 regions having not yet registered. I don't even think they'll get through it by 2 o'clock.
No, definitely not. If we go by the numbers of people that we saw there. Mr. Harvey, there are a couple of issues that obviously these closed sessions are going to unpack in terms of ANC policy. And many of those we've spoken to throughout the morning had said issues around generational leadership have to be spoken about within the party. But very importantly, the energy crisis in South Africa and a way forward. Many feel that the ANC has not taken this crisis seriously enough and that it should be at the top of their agenda during these closed plenary sessions that they're going to be having.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've just been experiencing the worst load-shedding crisis, not just in post-apartheid South Africa, but in the entire history of South Africa, And I'm afraid to say that the ANC won't find this palatable, but really, if you're going to dig down and do a lot of research into when the ANC took office in 1994, this, and Becky sort of implied later on, the ANC bears primary responsibility, really, for the mess at Eskom and the crisis we're sitting with, including the load shedding, And quite frankly, I think Andre de Ruyter's resignation, which appears to have been forced upon him, how could the Minister of Mineral and Energy Affairs go and make statements like that about, treason and so on? And then Pravin Gordhan and even the Ramaphosa, nobody came to the defense of de Ruyter. I mean, I would have probably been compelled or felt the need to go and resign when nobody. So what they basically, that's why some analysts are saying they played politics. They allowed, these are people who are together with Ramaphosa in the cabinet, political leaders of the ANC, and they sacrificed de Ruyter. He was left, without any, apparently it played a big part in his reluctance to tender his resignation.
I mean, and that's been one of the big things, hasn't it? And I wonder if the conference will have the courage to face this issue head on. This thing of politicizing things that should not be politicized. And we've spoken about this, you and I, a little bit earlier on, but I think it's important that we bring it back. The politicization of the para matter, It's a constitutional issue that should be dealt with accordingly. And then it gets mixed up with all sorts of politics. And I wonder if many of the issues that we have across the country and within the ANC are not as a result of that meshing up of situations and politicizing things unnecessarily.
I think it is, but it's also a lot of the problems have got to do with the conflation between state and party. Because, you know, it's true that the ANC strode the political stage like a colossus until 2004 and then 9 and lost a lot of support in 2016 and then 2021 lost the powerhouse of production, Gauteng, etc. But the ANC is sitting with a multiplicity of problems. Don't also forget when you talk of policy, what did they do to Gwedi Mantashe at the ANC's COSATU Congress? I mean, the COSATU Congress just recently. I mean, 2 consecutive days refused him permission to speak and address. Who can believe that? I mean, he comes from the trade unions, but that reflects the, you know, how unhappy COSATU is. So I'm just saying it also relates to policy. They've accused the ANC of promoting neoliberal policies. They directly hold the ANC responsible for the increase in black poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, you know. So when you talk of policy shifts and changes, the whole range of things, you know, you have to listen to COSATU and even the SACP, but more reluctant the SACP. COSATU is saying a whole lot of things about policy. You, all the time. And I don't know if the ANC is listening, really. So it's not just probably because of the depth of this crisis and how load shedding has been so devastating to the lives of people, business, that it's on top of the agenda about policy issues that should be confronted. But there's a whole range. I mean, do you know that alongside the electricity crisis, this is the worst ever sewerage and water sanitation crisis in post-apartheid South Africa that's also unfolding simultaneous with the Eskom electricity crisis.
I mean, think about that, and the report that's going to be issued by the President and the Deputy President, the political report and the organizational report, are supposed to be documents where they account for what they've done over the last 5 years in terms of policy implementation. You've just highlighted to us they failed when it comes to power, they failed when it comes to water and sanitation in the country, and of course there are still issues of jobs that they still haven't been able to fix, issues of economic growth. So over the last 5 years, would you say that there is a track record that the ANC can be proud of and stand in front of delegates later on today and say, this is what we've done over the last 5 years and it's more than sufficient? Or should they actually be hanging their heads in shame?
No, honestly, you know, I know a lot of people in the ANC leadership and have relationships, so it's not easy for me to say what I'm about to say. The ANC must take ultimate risk. It's the ruling party. You can't even accuse white monopoly capital and white syndicate. They were nothing to do. The ANC's got the ruling party. It had a mandate to bring about changes, etc. And don't forget, the ANC is not only faced with the worst socio-economic crisis. We've got the Palapala report. We've got the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. And they cannot finish this national conference without drawing firm resolutions around the Palapala scandal and, as you say correctly, the energy crisis. But don't forget, please, you can see what's happening to water and sewerage around the country. It's collapsing. There are problems all over. So it's a combination of electricity and sanitation, sewerage and water, all together. And quite honestly, you know, that's why I say listen to COSATU, because COSATU has also attacked the municipal policies of the ANC. This commercialization, corporatization, and commodification of that's where prepaid water meters and electricity meters come. The Nationalist Party never even imposed. They imposed. You know what they did in Piri and Soweto? They pulled in the army. The people were ripping the prepaid water meters out of the ground. And they got the army to complete the forced imposed installation of prepaid meters in Piri and Soweto. My doctorate is based on it, so I know the story. So when you talk of policy changes and shifts, you need to address a whole wide range of issues and crises that we're confronted with at the moment. And unfortunately, the ANC is not equal to the task. And besides that, you know, I think what they forget is that to have an appraisal of the problems that, you know, that confronts the ANC, you need honesty. Tell no lies, claim no easy victories, you know. I think the ANC, so that's precisely why the severe contradiction that continuously accompanies the ANC's talk of a renewal. Do you know that I have not seen one document where the ANC clearly and comprehensively even defines what renewal to them means? I have not seen it. So how can you talk of renewal then in any case, you know, the renewal talk began at the Stellenbosch conference in 2002. It's 20 years. And to the contrary, instead of renewal, to however they define that renewal, corruption got worse, the socio-economic crisis. We're now sitting with the most unequal country in the world, with a supposed constitution that's among the best in the world. So how could you have a constitution that in word is purportedly amongst the best in the world, and you have the worst socio-economic crisis of black poverty, unemployment, and raging social inequality? And it begins, if you know the Constitution, it begins with the Constitution. It's got a caveat, a neoliberal limitation that basically says that any changes to people's lives and the conditions of their lives depends in the final analysis on available resources. So within a neoliberal macroeconomic conservative budgetary framework, you're going to continuously not have sufficient funds. I mean, who can believe that the black townships are in a considerably worse condition today than they were under apartheid?
It's a scary thought. And as you speak, you make reference quite a bit to COSATU and the role that they have played in trying to open the ANC's eyes in what has deteriorated over the last few years. Have you found that the tripartite alliance and its importance within its engagement with the ruling party and so on, that has fallen by the wayside, and that has probably led to one of the reasons where we sit where we are today, not knowing the priorities of the ANC in terms of socio-economic freedoms to be provided, but also a way forward in terms of bringing South Africa out of this economic slump. Do you think that if there was a stronger alliance between the different parties that form the tripartite, things might be a little bit different going into the conference?
Well, no doubt it would have been much better. The ruling allies of the ANC, COSATU and the SSCP, has been that from 1994. But you know that COSATU and the SSCP has largely been convenient electoral cannon fodder for the ANC. That has been and now they are demanding, you see, more say in policy, and you can see how they treated Gwede Mantashe. So they're very unhappy. And don't just see COSATU in terms of wages. Look at also at what the ANC did to the public sector wage reneging last year. They reneged on the last leg of a public sector wage agreement of 2018. They never implemented 2021. And you've seen how the public sector workers have been up in arms against the ANC.
Doc, we'll continue our conversation. We do understand that there's a VUM dealer standing by there, Masako and Bra Dan, with the very latest from Nasrec. As I've just said, we do have political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey with me in studio.